My name is Yusuf. Thank you for joining me in this Excel series, Business Process as an Analytical Tool. Now, what we're gonna do here, we're gonna understand what is a flowchart. A flowchart is an effective way to understand a certain process, and once we understand a process, we can make decisions or we can make analysis based on capacity. We can use it to identify bottlenecks, and once we remove those bottlenecks, we can think about ways to maximize our production. How we can reduce the cost and how we can optimize the process in general. Optimizing the process can mean how to make things faster, how to do things at a lower cost, or how can we remove certain steps if it's not required. Now, but before we go into this course, it's important to know that this is not a basic Excel course, right? This is what I would categorize as an intermediate Excel course. So this means that you should be familiar with the tools you have on Excel, and some of the functions that we've been using is the formulas to manipulate data and to analyze data. So if you are very confident of Excel, you know how to use the formula pretty well. Let's proceed. Flowchart. Flowchart is really helpful. It helps you to tell the story, helps you to tell the process. As I was googling flowchart, there's a lot of variations to it, as you can see, but the differences, as I can see it, is just different shapes, different colors, but more or less you get an idea. They do look pretty similar. So again, what is a flowchart? As I was trying to Google a good definition, I came across this website called SmartDraw. SmartDraw is a flowchart software provider. You can create flowchart with many other different softwares. You can use PowerPoint, you can use Visio, you can use Signavio, you can use WebSphere. There are many different tools available. You can use whatever you want. As per the definition, a flowchart is actually just a visual representations of a series of actions from start to finish, right? Each action item is represented by a certain shape. That could be a square or a diamond. That could mean a particular action for a user, a particular decision for a user. But the point of a flowchart allows anybody to read from start to finish what are in the correct sequence, and understanding what are the steps required in between to complete the entire process. So this is just a very simple flowchart concepts here, but you can see from here you always need to start with something. You start the process and then you do something. I call it the first action, and after you're done, maybe you need to do something else. I call it the second action, and after you're done, maybe you are expected to make decisions. Do you want to do A or do you want to do B? Sometimes those decisions will lead to different outcomes. Sometimes it will lead to the same outcome. But all of that is determined by your flowcharts or the business case that you're trying to build. So over here is just a very simple overview of what a flowchart is. Let's begin. Do an example about flowcharting. Let's give a simple scenario. Let's say there's a person, okay, pardon my drawing, is gonna buy something from a shop, and you have your shop. If you think about it, that's all it is. He goes to the shop. You expect him to leave the shop with whatever he wants. Now, let's say inside the shop, this is slightly a bit more complicated process, right? Let's say this guy, he has to buy. Let's say he wants to buy coffee, so he'll buy coffee, and then he'll go to the counter. Oops. There'll be a guy here saying, which coffee do you want? And then he'll have to make the choice. He have to decide what kind of coffee he wants. And then after he have decided, this guy, he will go and take a seat. There'll be a chair. He'll just wait until someone call call him for his order. While he sits, he'll wait patiently, and then finally the coffee guy, he says, "Ready?" What happens is, he'll go back, he'll take his coffee, and then he'll exit, right? Well, this isn't really a flowchart, but I'm trying to tell a story here. In this process, it's definitely a process. What you can appreciate is, or what you can understand is, there are certain questions that you need to have in mind when you're doing a process analysis. Is like, number one, when he goes to the coffee shop, when he speaks to the guy, how many decisions does he have? Does he have one option, two options, three options? When he makes a coffee, he takes a seat. How long does he needs to wait? Right, because the longer he wait, that shows that the production rate, the capacity is slower. How long does it take for the coffee guy to make? How many people are making the coffee? If one guy can make one coffee every minute, you have two guys, you double the production. You have three guys, you have double the production. Then you also want to ask a question like, how many people come, how frequently, because that determines the number of maybe coffee makers you want to have, right? So you want to know the optimized value, like, how many people should I have making coffee, and maybe at certain times of the day. If it's more crowded, you should have more, or potentially if there's a crowd, and if things are moving slowly, sometimes you see a long line in the coffee shop and you're wondering why. Now, usually that's because there's a bottleneck. And what's a bottleneck? Is it because, number one, the person making the coffee is really slow, or number two, the customer sometimes can decide what they want to buy, so until a decision is made, um, they can proceed to make the coffee. So these are some of the thought process that you should have in mind when we are doing analysis. Now, let's go into something more formal. Okay, so for here I have a flowchart. It's not exactly telling the same story as previously, but it's good enough to make my case. So my flowchart is slightly different. Remember I said about the variations? Well, this time I divide it into swim lane. I have the stakeholders. I have the shop employee, the coffee maker, I have the customer, and I put boxes at the top to represent the time. Now, this is what's happening. Like, the customer enter, he chooses the drink, maybe it takes 2 minutes. He makes a payment, maybe it takes a minute. The shop owner, he processes the order, and then while he makes the coffee, the customer waits. While the customer waits, once the coffee maker is done, he'll call for the name, and then customer collects and he exits. That's it. That's the end of the process. Now, I have here, just timing, just for my understanding. Let's say if customer comes in at 10 a.m., he'll be ready to choose a drink by 10:02. He makes a payment and the order should be processed by maybe 10:04. He waits while the coffee is being made at 10:05, and by 10:07 he gets to go with his coffee. Um, right, but let's say we have one shop employee who is taking the order, who is making the coffee, and he's going to be calling when the coffee is ready. Now, what happens if you have two customers coming in at the exact same time? Now, you would have to process one customer at a time. So what's going to happen is, customer A is going to come, choose his drink, make his payment, and then he's going to wait. But the shop employee says, you know what, I don't want to be making two coffee separately. I want to make them at the same time. So while customer A is waiting, I'm gonna go to customer B, and after he makes his choice, so customer B is gonna be served at 10:04. She's gonna make payment at 10:07. The order is gonna be processed, and at 10:08, customer B coffee is being made at the same time with customer A. Both of them will be collecting the coffee at 10:10. As you can see, initially it was 10:07, now it's 10:10, right? This means that customer A would have to wait 5 minutes instead of 2 minutes initially. No, and then the customer B, he instead of 10:02, he'll be, you know, his process will be ordered at 10:07. Now imagine if there are more people down the line, things will be gonna be slower for the shop employee. But this is good enough for you to be able to tell a story of what is required or what are dependency uh, that needs to happen before the next step can happen, right? As you have more people, you can start to realize what are some of the bottlenecks. Now, what I'll show you here isn't the exact tool of analyzing, but at a very high level. It gives you a sense of appreciation of how useful a flowchart can be. So this segment is all about understanding a process using the flowchart. Right. In the next segment, we're going to start diving into Excel as a tool to analyze the bottlenecks. We're going to analyze capacity. We're going to see how we can maximize production or we can reduce our costs. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope to hear from you soon.